Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at the screen before him. His hands gripped the edge of the control panel so hard his knuckles turned white. The images coming from the planet below made his stomach turn. New Haven Colony was supposed to be a peaceful mining settlement. 50,000 people lived there. Families, children, workers who just wanted to build a better life on the outer rim of human space. Now it was gone. Everything was ash and rubble. Not a single building stood intact. The scanners showed no life signs. Not one person had survived. "Sir, we need to go down there," Lieutenant Amy Foster said quietly. She was his second in command, a woman who had served with him for 8 years. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could see the anger burning in her eyes. "Prepare a landing team," Morrison said. His voice came out rough and hard. "Full protective gear. I want answers." The shuttle ride down to the planet's surface felt like it took forever. Morrison sat in silence, watching the gray clouds part as they descended. When they landed on the outskirts of what used to be the main settlement, the destruction was even worse than the scans had shown. Buildings were melted. The ground was scorched black. Vehicles were twisted pieces of metal. Morrison and his team walked through the ruins, their boots crunching on debris. The air smelled like burned plastic and death. Foster pointed to a large crater in the center of the town. "They hit the community center first," she said. "That's where the children would have been. The school was attached to it." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were hitting. This wasn't random. This was deliberate murder. His team spread out, looking for any clue about what happened. It was one of his engineers who found the data recorder buried under rubble near the communication tower. "Captain, you need to see this," the engineer called out. Back on the ship, Morrison played the recovered footage. The recording showed massive alien warships dropping out of space above New Haven. The design was unmistakable. Vakran Empire vessels. The recording had audio too. Morrison heard the colonists trying to hail the ships, asking what they wanted. The Vakran response was weapons fire. The colonists tried to surrender. Morrison watched as his people raised white flags, gathered in groups with their hands up. The Vakran ships fired on them anyway. Men, women, children. It didn't matter. The attack lasted 3 hours. The Vakran made sure nothing survived. Foster stood beside Morrison as the recording ended. Why would they do this? New Haven had nothing valuable, just basic mining equipment and family homes. "They're testing us," Morrison said quietly. "They want to see what we'll do." Morrison sent the evidence directly to Earth. He sent copies to the Galactic Council too. Then he waited. The response from Earth came first. Ambassador Helen Brooks was being recalled from the Council station. All human diplomatic ships were ordered to return to Earth space. Something big was happening. The Galactic Council's response came 3 days later. It made Morrison want to punch something. The Council offered their deep condolences and issued a strong condemnation of the attack. But they refused to take action against the Vakran Empire. The message was clear. The Vakran were too powerful. The Council was too afraid to do anything real. Ambassador Brooks sent Morrison a private message. Her face on the screen looked tired and angry. "They told me to my face that humanity should accept payment for damages and move on," she said. They actually used those words. Payment for damages. Like our people were broken furniture. Brooks paused and Morrison saw something dangerous in her expression. Something he had never seen before in the usually calm diplomat. "I told the Council that humanity doesn't accept blood money," Brooks continued. "I told them we demand justice. They laughed, Jake. Not out loud, but I saw it in their faces. They think we're weak. They think because we prefer talking to fighting, we can't fight at all." "What did Earth say?" Morrison asked. "I'm going home," Brooks said simply. "All of us are. The talking is done. The Vakran Empire made things worse. Their emperor gave a public speech that was broadcast across the entire galaxy. He stood in his throne room, surrounded by his generals, and spoke about the New Haven colony. He called it an unfortunate accident. He offered humanity 10 million credits as compensation. Then he smiled. "The humans are upset," the emperor said. "They make many loud words. But words are all they have. They are talkers, not fighters. They will accept our generous offer and return to their trade routes like good little merchants. His generals laughed. The whole galaxy watched that broadcast. Morrison watched it too, standing on his bridge with his entire crew around him. Nobody said anything when it ended. The silence was heavy and dark. Then Morrison's communication panel lit up. It was a priority message from Earth Defense Command. The sender was someone Morrison had never heard of before, Commander Ryan Carter. The message was short. Operation Silent Thunder is active. Return to Sol system immediately. Maintain communication silence. The time for talking is over. Morrison looked at Foster. She looked back at him with understanding in her eyes. Something was happening. Something big. Set course for Earth, Morrison ordered. Maximum speed. As the horizon's edge turned toward home, Morrison thought about the Emperor's words. Talkers, not fighters. The Vecron had no idea how wrong they were. Humanity had been fighting wars since before they discovered fire. They had fought with sticks and stones. They had fought with swords and spears. They had fought with bullets and bombs. They had fought each other for thousands of years before reaching the stars. Humans knew how to fight. They just chose not to most of the time. There was a difference between can't fight and won't fight. The Vacron were about to learn that difference. When Morrison's ship reached Earth space 2 weeks later, he couldn't believe what he saw. The entire asteroid belt was lit up with activity. Hundreds of massive warships were emerging from hidden bases inside the asteroids. These weren't the small patrol ships other species knew about. These were warships, real warships, dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, cruisers. How long have those been there? Foster whispered. Since first contact, I would guess, Morrison said. We have been building this fleet for over 100 years, quietly, secretly, just in case we ever needed it. A message came through from Earth Defense Command. Morrison was ordered to report to a military station near Mars. When he arrived, he found Ambassador Brooks there too, along with dozens of other ship captains and military officers. They were led into a massive briefing room. Commander Ryan Carter stood at the front of the room. He was a tall man with gray hair and cold eyes. Behind him was a holographic display showing the Vacron Empire's territory. For 127 years, humanity has been part of the Galactic Council, Carter began. During that time, we have been peaceful. We have been diplomatic. We have been patient. We have also been preparing. The display changed, showing the hidden fleet. The other species think we're merchants and talkers, Carter continued. They forgot to check our history. They forgot to ask what humans did before we joined the council. We fought. We fought each other for thousands of years. We got very, very good at it. Carter's expression hardened. The Vacron Empire murdered 50,000 human civilians. They targeted children. They killed people who tried to surrender. The Galactic Council refused to act, so we will act, alone if necessary. The room was completely silent. Operation Silent Thunder has 3 goals, Carter said. First, bring the Vacron leadership to justice for their crimes. Second, dismantle their military so they can never threaten anyone again. Third, show the entire galaxy that humanity will defend the innocent, even if no one else will. Morrison felt something stirring in his chest. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was purpose. The Emperor called us talkers, Carter said quietly. He's about to learn that the most dangerous human is the one who tried every other option first. Because when a human finally decides to fight, they don't stop until the job is done. Carter looked around the room at all the assembled officers. Prepare your ships. Prepare your crews. In 7 days, we go to war. The Vacron wanted to see what happens when they push humanity too far. They're about to find out. Morrison left the briefing with Foster at his side. The Horizon's Edge would be refitted as a combat vessel. All the diplomatic ships would be. Every human in the fleet understood what was coming. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. This was about making sure no one ever thought they could murder humans and walk away. Across human space, the call went out. Every ship, every station, every colony. The message was simple and clear. The time for talking was over. Humanity was going to war, and the universe was about to learn that when humans get angry, when they truly commit to something, nothing in creation can stop them. The Emperor had called them weak. He was about to discover his mistake. The countdown had begun. The universe trembles. When humans get angry, Admiral Kevin Shaw stood in the command center of the EDS Retribution, watching as his fleet assembled in formation. 200 warships hung in the darkness of space, their hulls gleaming under the distant light of the sun. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built in secret over more than a century. The galaxy had no idea these ships existed. That was about to change. Shaw was a career military officer, 62 years old with more combat training than most soldiers would see in 3 lifetimes. But those were simulations and exercises. Humanity hadn't fought a real war in space before. They were about to start one. "Admiral, all ships report ready," a young officer said from her station. Shaw nodded slowly. "Good. Open a channel to the fleet." The communication officer pressed a button. Shaw knew that every captain, every crew member in the fleet was listening now. "This is Admiral Shaw. In 6 days we will jump into background space. Our mission is clear. We will find those responsible for the murder of 50,000 civilians at New Haven. We will bring them to justice. We will show the galaxy that humanity protects the innocent. But remember this, we are not butchers. We are not murderers. We fight with honor. We fight with precision. And we will win." Shaw closed the channel. He looked at the tactical display showing the route to Vakran territory. It would take 6 days of faster-than-light travel to reach the border. 6 days to prepare. 6 days for the Vakran to wonder if humanity was serious. On the far side of human space, Colonel Nina Ross was leading a very different kind of preparation. She stood in a hangar bay watching her Marines load equipment onto stealth transport ships. These weren't the big warships that would fight in open space. These were shadow ships, designed to slip past enemy defenses unseen. Ross was a special operations officer, trained in tactics that most soldiers never learned. She was 40 years old, tough as steel and absolutely focused on her mission. Her team of 300 Marines would strike at Vakran supply lines while the main fleet drew their attention. "Colonel, the first transport is loaded," her second-in-command said. Captain Ben Hayes was a solid officer who had trained with Ross for 10 years. "How are the troops?" Ross asked. "Ready. Angry." They all saw the footage from New Haven. Ross nodded. "Good. Angry soldiers fight harder. But make sure they stay disciplined. We're not here for revenge. We're here for justice." Hayes smiled grimly. "Is there a difference?" "Yes," Ross said simply. "Revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making sure it never happens again." Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council station, the aliens were panicking. Ambassador Helen Brooks watched from Earth as emergency council sessions were called every few hours. The council members had finally realized that humanity was serious about going to war with the Vakran Empire. A Telvanni ambassador, a species that looked like tall blue birds, sent a desperate message to Earth. The holographic image showed the ambassador's feathers ruffled in distress. "Ambassador Brooks, you must reconsider this course of action. War with the Vakran will destabilize the entire sector. Surely we can find a diplomatic solution." Brooks stood in her office on Earth looking at the hologram with cold eyes. "We tried diplomacy. The Council refused to act. You told us to accept money and move on. You told us the Vakran were too powerful to challenge." The Telvanni ambassador shifted uncomfortably. "We were trying to prevent greater bloodshed." "You were trying to prevent any bloodshed to yourselves," Brooks said. "You were willing to sacrifice human lives to maintain your comfortable peace. Now you're going to see what happens when you abandon justice for convenience. But the Vakran have 800 warships. Your fleet is much smaller. This is suicide." Brooks smiled, and there was no humor in it. "You're making the same mistake the Vakran made. You're counting ships. You're not counting determination. You're not counting skill. You're not counting the fact that humans have been perfecting warfare for 10,000 years. She cut the connection before the ambassador could respond. Brooks was done talking to the council. They had their chance. They chose to do nothing. Now humanity would handle it alone. Back on the Retribution, Admiral Shaw was meeting with his tactical officers. They were going over the invasion plan for the 10th time. Shaw believed in thorough preparation. Every officer needed to know exactly what they were supposed to do. The Vakran fleet is concentrated here, the tactical officer said, pointing to a star system on the holographic map. That's their main staging area. 800 ships. Heavy cruisers, battleships, and fighters. Shaw studied the map. What about their defensive stations? 12 orbital platforms. Each one has enough firepower to destroy a planet. They're protecting their major worlds. Shaw nodded slowly. Then we don't hit their major worlds. Not yet, we hit their supply lines first. We hit their communication relays. We make them blind and hungry. Then we hit their fleet. One of the younger officers spoke up nervously. Sir, even with those tactics, we're outnumbered 4-1. Shaw looked at the young man. Son, you're thinking like they think. Long-range artillery. Slow movements. Predictable formations. That's not how we fight. We fight fast. We fight smart. And we fight like our lives depend on every single shot because they do. The officer nodded, looking slightly less nervous. Shaw continued. The Vakran have more ships than us. But our ships are better. Our weapons are more accurate. Our crews are better trained. And most importantly, we want this more than they do. They're fighting because their emperor told them to. We're fighting because they murdered our families. Across human space, the war preparations were visible to everyone. Colonies that had been peaceful for decades were now sending every able person to help. Some joined the military. Others worked in factories building weapons and supplies. Children made care packages for soldiers. Old veterans came out of retirement to train the new recruits. The unity was remarkable. Humans had always been good at fighting each other. They argued about everything: politics, religion, sports. But when an outside threat appeared, when someone attacked humanity itself, all those differences disappeared. They became one people with one purpose. Dr. Peter Grant worked in a secret laboratory deep under Earth's surface. He was the head of the weapons development program. His team had been creating new military technology for decades, always in secret, always preparing for a day that might never come. Now that day had arrived. Grant stood in front of a massive weapon that looked like a huge metal cylinder. It was called a hammer round. The concept was simple but devastating. Fire a solid piece of metal at 90% the speed of light. The kinetic energy alone would be like a nuclear explosion. Are we ready for field testing? Grant asked his assistant. Yes, sir. The prototype is loaded on the Retribution. Admiral Shaw will test it during the first engagement. Grant nodded. He felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. This weapon could kill thousands. But if it worked, it might save millions by ending the war faster. On the 5th day of preparation, the Vakran Emperor finally responded to humanity's military buildup. His message was broadcast across the galaxy. He appeared on screens everywhere, sitting on his throne, looking amused. I see the humans are gathering their little fleet, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. 200 ships. How cute. They think they can challenge the might of the Vakran Empire. They think their words of justice mean something. Let me make this clear. The weak have no rights. The strong take what they want. New Haven was weak, so we took it. If the humans continue this foolish aggression, we will take more of their colonies. We will teach them their place in this galaxy. The Emperor leaned forward, his eyes glinting with malice. Come if you dare, little humans. Come and die. Your ships will burn. Your people will beg for mercy. And we will show you the same mercy you showed us. None. The broadcast ended. Shaw watched it on the bridge of the Retribution. Around him, his officers were silent. Then Foster spoke up. She had transferred from Morrison's ship to serve as Shaw's tactical coordinator. He just made this personal, she said quietly. It was already personal, Shaw replied. He just doesn't know it yet. Send a message to the fleet. We jump in 12 hours. I want every ship ready. I want every weapon loaded. I want every crew member at their station. Yes, sir, Foster said. Shaw turned to look at the view screen showing the assembled fleet. Somewhere out there, the Vakran were laughing. They thought humans were weak. They thought this would be easy. They had no idea what was coming, because humans didn't just fight to win. They fought until the job was done. They fought with a determination that came from 10,000 years of survival against impossible odds. They fought with technology that had been refined through countless wars. They fought with a unity that came from shared purpose. And most importantly, they fought for something the Vakran could never understand. They fought for justice. They fought to protect the innocent. They fought because someone had to stand up to bullies, even if the rest of the galaxy was too afraid to do it. The countdown began. 12 hours until the fleet jumped into Vakron space. 12 hours until the galaxy learned what happened when you pushed humanity too far. 12 hours until the Vakron discovered that the quiet diplomat who sat at the peace table was the same species that had conquered their own planet through sheer stubborn refusal to ever. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Vakran space. 200 ships appeared in perfect formation, their weapons powered up and shields active. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Shaw watched the tactical display light up with enemy contacts. Vakran patrol fleet detected, Foster reported. 20 ships. They're moving to intercept. Shaw smiled coldly. 20 ships. They think that's enough. Launch fighters. All ships battle formation Delta. Let's show them how humans fight. The human fleet moved with precision that shocked the Vakran commanders. Most species fought in slow, predictable patterns. Line up, exchange fire at long range. Whoever had more ships usually won. But the human ships moved like a school of fish, weaving and dodging, never staying in one place. The Vakran patrol fleet fired their main weapons. Massive energy beams cut through space where the human ships had been a second ago, but the humans were already somewhere else. Then the human fighters launched. 300 small attack craft poured out of the carrier ships. They flew in coordinated groups, hitting the Vakran vessels from multiple angles at once. The Vakran had fighters too, but they flew in straight lines, easy to predict. Human pilots flew like they were dancing, spinning and diving and attacking from impossible angles. Lieutenant Sam Cooper led the first fighter wing. He was 28 years old and had trained his entire adult life for this moment. His fighter Phoenix 1 streaked toward a Vakran cruiser, dodging defensive fire with ease. Phoenix Wing, follow my lead, Cooper called over the radio. We're going for their engine pods. Hit them fast and get out. His squadron followed him in. They fired missiles at precise points on the Vakran ship's hull. The missiles weren't that powerful individually, but they hit exactly where the ship was weakest. The Vakran cruiser's engines exploded. The ship went dark, drifting helplessly in space. One down, Cooper said, moving to target 2. On the Retribution, Shaw watched the battle unfold with satisfaction. The Vakran patrol fleet was being torn apart. The enemy had more mass, more armor, bigger guns, but none of that mattered when you couldn't hit your target. Enemy fleet is retreating, Foster reported. No, Shaw said. They're running to call for help. Don't let them. I want every ship disabled or destroyed. No survivors to warn the main fleet about our tactics. It was brutal but necessary. If the Vakran learned how humans fought, they would adapt. Shaw needed every advantage he could get. The human ships pursued the retreating Vakran vessels, destroying their communication arrays first, then their engines. Within an hour, the entire patrol fleet was gone. Casualties, Shaw asked. 3 fighters damaged. No deaths. The Vakran lost all 20 ships. Shaw nodded. That's what superior tactics look like. Set course for the nearest Vakran supply depot. We're going to make them hungry. While the main fleet was fighting, Colonel Ross and her Marines were doing their part. Her stealth transports had slipped past Vakran defenses and were now approaching a major supply station. The station was huge, a floating city in space that provided food, fuel, and ammunition to the entire Vakran Eastern Fleet. Ross stood in the transport bay with her 300 Marines. They were wearing powered combat armor, black metal suits that made each soldier stronger and faster. The armor had active camouflage that made them nearly invisible. Remember the mission, Ross said to her troops. We take the station intact. We secure the supplies. We don't kill anyone who surrenders. But anyone who fights back, you put them down hard. Clear? Clear. The Marines responded in unison. The transports docked with the station at maintenance ports. The Vakran guards didn't even notice them. The hatches opened and the Marines poured in. Ross led the first squad, moving through the corridors with smooth efficiency. A Vakran guard turned a corner and found himself face to face with Ross. His eyes went wide with shock. Before he could raise his weapon, Ross had him on the ground with a gun pressed to his head. Don't move and you live, she said in the Vakran language. Fight and you die. Your choice. The guard dropped his weapon and put his hands up. Ross's Marines zip-tied his hands and moved on. They swept through the station level by level. Most of the Vakran workers surrendered immediately when they saw the armored humans. A few tried to fight. Those ones didn't get a second chance. Within 2 hours, the entire supply station was under human control. Ross stood in the command center looking at the inventory screens. The station held enough supplies to feed the Vakran Eastern Fleet for 6 months. Rig the main fuel depot with charges, Ross ordered. When the Vakran fleet comes to investigate, they're going to get a surprise. Meanwhile, back with the main fleet, Shaw had destroyed 3 more supply depots and 2 communication relay stations. The Vakran command was starting to panic. They were losing contact with their outer colonies. Their supply lines were being cut. And they still hadn't seen the main human fleet. The Vakran Emperor called an emergency meeting with his generals. He was no longer smiling. How is this possible, he demanded. They only have 200 ships. We have 800. Yet they're running circles around us. One of his generals, a scarred veteran, spoke carefully. Sire, the humans fight differently than any species we've encountered. They don't stand and trade fire. They strike fast and disappear. They target our weaknesses with precision. And their fighter pilots are extraordinarily skilled. The Emperor slammed his fist on the table. I don't care how they fight. Send the main fleet. Crush them. Show them what real power looks like. The general hesitated. Sire, perhaps we should reconsider. These humans are more dangerous than we thought. Maybe we could negotiate. The Emperor's eyes blazed with anger. Negotiate? With those weaklings? Never. I want the human fleet destroyed. All of it. Send 800 ships if you have to. Just kill them all. The Vakran main fleet launched 3 days later. 800 warships, the pride of the Empire, moving to crush the human invaders. The fleet was led by Admiral Krex, the most experienced Vakran commander. He had fought in 30 battles and won them all. Krex studied the reports of human tactics carefully. Fast-moving ships, coordinated fighter attacks, precision strikes. He would be ready for it. His fleet outnumbered the humans 4-1. No amount of fancy flying could overcome those odds. The 2 fleets met at a place called Theta Station, an old abandoned mining facility. Shaw had chosen the location carefully. The area was full of asteroids and debris, perfect for ambush tactics. Enemy fleet approaching, Foster reported. All 800 ships. They're in standard attack formation. Shaw studied the tactical display. Standard formation. Predictable. Perfect. Execute Plan Gamma. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The main force with Shaw faced the Vakran fleet head-on, but 2 smaller groups, 50 ships each, circled around through the asteroid field. The Vakran couldn't see them on their sensors because of all the interference from the asteroids. Admiral Krex watched the human fleet split up and smiled. They're dividing their forces, fools. Concentrate fire on the main group. We'll destroy them first. The Vakran fleet opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams lashed out at the human ships, but Shaw had timed it perfectly. His ships jumped backward, moving behind a large asteroid just as the beams arrived. The Vakran fire hit nothing but rock, then the human counterattack began. The 2 hidden groups emerged from the asteroid field on both sides of the Vakran formation. They fired the new hammer rounds that Dr. Grant had developed, solid metal projectiles moving at 90% light speed. The Vakran fleet had shields designed to stop energy weapons. But kinetic weapons were different. The hammer rounds punched through the shields like they weren't there. Each round hit with the force of a nuclear bomb. Vakran ships exploded one after another. Admiral Krex watched in horror as his flanks collapsed. Evasive maneuvers, he screamed. Return fire on those ships. But the human ships were already moving again. They fired, jumped away, and fired from a new position. The Vakran fleet was being torn apart. Krex had more ships, more guns, more firepower. But none of it mattered when his weapons couldn't hit the target. Meanwhile, Cooper and his fighter wings were having a field day. They swooped through the Vakran formation, targeting weapons batteries and engine systems. The Vakran fighters tried to intercept them, but the human pilots were simply better. Faster reactions, better training, more experience. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Vakran fleet was shattered. 200 ships destroyed, 300 more damaged and retreating. Admiral Krex's flagship was drifting in space, all systems offline. Shaw's fleet had lost 12 ships. Casualties were heavy, over 3,000 dead, but they had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. Foster looked at the tactical display, her face pale. We just destroyed a fleet 4 times our size. Shaw's expression was grim. And we paid for it. 3,000 of our people died today. This is the price of war. This is what the Vakran forced us to do. He opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Shaw. You fought well today. You fought bravely. We've shown the Vakran that humans cannot be bullied. But this is just the beginning. The real battle is ahead. We're going to their homeworld. We're going to end this war, and we're going to make sure they never threaten anyone again. Across human space, the news of the victory spread. The impossible had... 6 months had passed since the Battle of Theta Station. The war had turned into a nightmare for the Vakran Empire. Their fleet was broken. Their supply lines were cut. Rebellion was spreading across their conquered worlds. And now the human fleet sat at the edge of the Vakran home system, looking down at the planet where it all began. Admiral Shaw stood on the bridge of the Retribution, studying the defenses around Vakra Prime. 150 warships remained, the last of the once mighty Vakran fleet. Surrounding the planet were 12 massive orbital defense platforms, each one capable of destroying a fleet by itself. And on the surface, billions of Vakran civilians lived their lives unaware of how close their world was to destruction. Captain Morrison entered the bridge. He had been promoted after the Battle of Theta Station and now commanded a battle group of 20 ships. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's not from the military. It's from civilian resistance groups. Shaw raised an eyebrow. Put it through. A Vakran face appeared on the screen. She was young, with fear in her eyes but determination in her voice. Human fleet, my name is Vera. I represent the Vakran People's Alliance. We are citizens who oppose our government's actions. We know what they did to your colony. We know they murdered innocent people. Many of us tried to stop it, but the Emperor's forces silenced us. Shaw leaned forward. Why are you telling us this? Because we don't want to die for his crimes, Vera said. The Emperor is preparing to use our civilians as shields. He's moving military equipment into residential areas. He's planning to make you kill innocent people to get to him. We're asking you to help us stop him. Shaw felt his jaw tighten. Where is the Emperor now? In his fortress beneath the capital city. He has a network of tunnels that span hundreds of miles. We can give you the maps. We can help you get to him, but you must promise us something. What? Promise that you won't destroy our world. Promise that you'll give us a chance to build something better when this is over. Shaw looked at Foster, then back at the screen. We're not here to destroy your world. We're here to stop your leaders from destroying anyone else's. Send us the maps. We'll do our part. You do yours. Vera nodded, relief flooding her face. Thank you. The transmission ended. Foster crossed her arms. Can we trust them? Doesn't matter, Shaw said. Our mission hasn't changed. We take down the Emperor and his inner circle. We protect civilians when possible, but if they shoot at us, we shoot back. Shaw opened a channel to the Vakran fleet guarding the planet. Vakran forces, this is Admiral Kevin Shaw of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons. Evacuate your crews to the planet. Do this and you will be treated fairly. Refuse and we will destroy you. You have 1 hour to decide. On the Vakran flagship, the acting fleet commander was a young officer named Tark. He had been promoted 3 times in the past month because everyone above him was dead. He looked at his sensor officer.
How many ships do they have?
180, sir. We have 150. Tark laughed bitterly. 3 months ago, we had 800 ships. Now look at us. These humans are demons. The sensor officer said nothing. Tark made his decision. Send a response. Tell them we surrender. Order all ships to power down weapons and evacuate crews. His officers stared at him in shock. Sir, the Emperor will have us executed. The Emperor is a madman who got us into this mess. Tark said coldly. I won't sacrifice my people for his pride. Send the message. Within an hour, the Vakran fleet was empty. The crews had evacuated to the surface. Shaw's fleet moved in unopposed. Now only the orbital platforms remained. These were automated systems controlled by the Emperor's command center on the surface. Captain Morrison, take your battle group and disable those platforms. Try to capture them intact if possible. We might need them later. Morrison's ships moved toward the nearest platform. It opened fire immediately. Massive beams of energy that could cut a ship in half. But Morrison had fought through worse. His ships scattered, coming at the platform from multiple angles. They fired precise shots at the platform's weapon systems, disabling them one by one. Within 3 hours, all 12 platforms were secured. The way to the planet was open. Shaw prepared for the final phase of the operation. He turned to Colonel Ross, who had just arrived on the Retribution. Colonel, you're going down there. Take your Marines and those maps the Resistance sent us. Find the Emperor. Bring him back alive if possible. Ross saluted. We'll get him, sir. What about the military forces on the surface? Avoid them when you can. Engage only if necessary. Focus on the mission. The Emperor is the target. Everything else is secondary. Ross gathered her Marines. They loaded into dropships, specially designed craft that could punch through a planet's atmosphere at high speed. Major Tony Richards stood beside Ross as they prepared to launch. His Marines were ready, their powered armor gleaming in the hangar lights. Think he'll surrender? Richards asked. Ross shook her head. Men like that never surrender. They think they're too important to lose. We'll have to drag him out. The dropships launched, streaking down toward the planet's surface like falling stars. The Vakran military fired anti-aircraft weapons at them, but the ships were too fast and too well armored. They crashed through the defensive fire and landed in a park near the capital city. Ross and her Marines poured out of the ships. Civilians scattered, running for cover. Ross raised her hand. Hold fire, let them run. We're not here for them. Her Marines advanced toward the fortress entrance that the Resistance had marked on their maps. It was a bunker entrance disguised as a subway station. Ross planted charges on the doors and her team took cover. The explosion blew the doors inward. They descended into the tunnels. The corridors were wide and made of reinforced concrete. Emergency lights cast everything in red shadows. Ross's armor sensors detected movement ahead. Enemy soldiers, she called out. Non-lethal if possible. Her Marines fired stun weapons. The Vakran guards collapsed, unconscious but alive. Ross's team moved deeper into the tunnel network, following the maps. They encountered more guards, more resistance, but nothing they couldn't handle. Then they reached the command bunker. It was a massive underground room filled with computers and holographic displays. At the center stood the Emperor, surrounded by his personal guards. He looked at Ross with contempt. So the humans send a woman to capture me, he sneered. How appropriate. You always were a weak species. Ross aimed her weapon at him. Your guards can put down their weapons and live, or they can fight and die. Their choice. The guards hesitated. They looked at the Emperor, then at the heavily armed Marines surrounding them. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons. The Emperor screamed at them in rage, but they ignored him. Ross walked forward and grabbed the Emperor by his arm. You're under arrest for war crimes. The murder of 50,000 human civilians. The use of biological weapons. The deliberate targeting of non-combatants. You'll stand trial before the Galactic Council. The Emperor spat at her. I am the ruler of an empire. I don't answer to you or anyone. Ross wiped the spit off her helmet visor. You're not a ruler anymore. You're a prisoner, and trust me, where you're going, nobody cares about your title. Above them, on the surface, Captain Alex Turner was coordinating humanitarian efforts. His ships were landing in cities across the planet, bringing food, medicine, and aid. The Vakran civilians were shocked. They had been told the humans would slaughter them all. Instead, humans were helping them. Turner stood in a hospital that had been damaged in the fighting. Human medics were treating Vakran wounded alongside the local doctors. A Vakran child no more than 6 years old looked up at Turner with wide eyes. Are you going to kill us? Turner knelt down to the child's level. No, we're here to help. The people who started this war hurt us, and they hurt you too. We're going to make sure they can't hurt anyone anymore. Then we're going to help you rebuild. The child's mother pulled her close, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Back on the Retribution, Shaw watched as Ross's transport returned with the Emperor in custody. The galactic media was broadcasting everything. Every species in the galaxy was watching as the mighty Vakran Emperor was led onto a human ship in chains. Shaw received a message from Earth. It was from Commander Carter. Job well done, Admiral. The Galactic Council is calling an emergency session. They want to discuss terms for the Vakran surrender and the Emperor's trial. You've done what you set out to do. You got justice for New Haven. Shaw looked at the planet below. Justice. Yes. But at what cost? 3,000 dead at Theta Station. Another 2,000 in the smaller battles. 5,000 humans who would never go home. He thought about the Vakran who died too. Young soldiers following orders. Civilians caught in crossfire. Foster stood beside him. Sir, we just received word. 17 other aggressive empires have sent messages to Earth. They're all offering peace treaties and trade agreements. They saw what we did here. Shaw nodded slowly. Good. Maybe some good will come from all this death. Morrison entered the bridge. Admiral, Captain Turner reports that the Vakran resistance is organizing elections. They want to form a new government. They're asking for our help. Shaw made a decision. We'll help them. Not because we want to control them, but because they deserve a chance to build something better. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Vakran Empire. The trial was finally beginning. Judge Sarah Mitchell stood in the center of a massive courtroom aboard a neutral space station. Representatives from every species in the Galactic Council were present. Camera drones floated through the air, broadcasting the proceedings to billions of beings across the galaxy. The Vakran Emperor sat in a reinforced glass cage, his hands bound. He no longer wore his royal robes. He wore a plain gray prisoner's uniform. His eyes burned with hatred, but he said nothing. Around him sat 23 of his generals and advisors, the ones who had planned and executed the attack on New Haven. Judge Mitchell was a stern woman in her 50s, a former Earth Supreme Court justice who had been chosen specifically for this task. She looked at the Emperor without emotion. The defendant will rise. The Emperor remained seated. His lawyer, a nervous Vakran appointed by the court, touched his arm. "You must stand," he whispered. The Emperor finally stood, moving slowly, making it clear he was cooperating under protest. "You are charged with crimes against sapient life," Mitchell said. "The deliberate murder of 50,000 human civilians, the use of biological weapons, the targeting of non-combatants including children, the torture and execution of prisoners of war. How do you plead?" The Emperor smiled coldly. "I plead not guilty. I was defending my empire against a hostile species. Everything I did was justified." Mitchell's expression didn't change. "The plea is entered. Let the evidence begin." For 3 weeks, the prosecution presented evidence. They showed the footage from New Haven. They showed civilians trying to surrender. They showed children running from the bombs. They showed the biological weapons being deployed. The entire galaxy watched. Many species that had been silent before now spoke out in horror. Ambassador Daniel Chen presented the human case. He was younger than Brooks, in his 30s, but he spoke with passion and precision. This was not war, he told the court. This was murder. War has rules. You don't target civilians. You don't kill children. You don't use weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. The Vakran Empire broke every rule. They did it deliberately. They did it proudly. The defense tried to argue that the Vakran were simply following their cultural norms. Their lawyer stood and spoke carefully. In Vakran culture, strength is valued above all else. The Emperor was acting according to his people's beliefs. Mitchell cut him off. Cultural differences do not excuse genocide. The court recognizes that different species have different values, but the right to life is universal. No culture gives anyone the right to murder innocents. The trial continued. Witnesses testified. Former Vakran soldiers told how they were ordered to kill civilians. Liberated slaves from conquered worlds described decades of cruelty. Human survivors from other colonies that had been attacked told their stories. Captain Jake Morrison took the stand. He described finding New Haven destroyed. He showed the recordings he had recovered. When he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, regardless of species. The defense called the Emperor to testify. He walked to the stand with his head high, still acting like he was in control. Chen cross-examined him. "Did you order the attack on New Haven?" Chen asked. "I gave my military permission to secure resources in that sector," the Emperor said carefully. "Resources? You mean the people living there?" "I mean the minerals and strategic position." Chen pulled up a hologram showing the colony. There were no strategic minerals at New Haven. It was a small mining operation extracting common metals. Nothing valuable. Nothing worth fighting over. So why attack it? The Emperor's face twitched. It was a message. To show that we could. A message to whom? To humanity. To show them their place. Chen nodded slowly. So you murdered 50,000 people, including 5,000 children, just to send a message. Just to show you could. The Emperor realized his mistake. He tried to backtrack. That's not what I meant, but it's what you said, and it's what you did. Chen turned to the judge. No further questions. The trial lasted 2 months. Finally, Mitchell called for closing arguments. Chen stood before the court one last time. "This case is simple," he said. "The defendants murdered innocent people. They did it knowingly. They did it deliberately. They showed no mercy. They deserve none in return. The prosecution asked for life imprisonment for all defendants. We ask that they never be allowed to threaten anyone again. The defense made their closing argument, but it was weak. Everyone knew what the verdict would be. The judges, a panel of 5 from different species, deliberated for 3 days. Then they returned. Mitchell read the verdict. On all counts, we find the defendants guilty. The evidence is overwhelming. The Emperor and his co-conspirators committed crimes against sapient life on a massive scale. They showed no remorse. They offered no apology. Therefore, this court sentences all defendants to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. They will be held in a maximum security facility on a remote planet, guarded by forces from multiple species. They will never be released. The Emperor screamed in rage. You have no right to judge me. I am the ruler of an empire. History will remember me as great. Mitchell looked at him coldly. History will remember you as a murderer. Guards removed the prisoners. As the Emperor was led away, still shouting, Ambassador Chen felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was done. Justice had been served. Not revenge, justice. While the trial was happening, other changes were sweeping the galaxy. The Vakran homeworld was recovering under temporary human administration. Captain Alex Turner had been appointed as the transition coordinator. He worked with the new Vakran government, helping them establish democracy for the first time in their history. Turner stood in what used to be the Emperor's throne room. It had been converted into a parliament chamber where elected Vakran representatives now met. Vera, the resistance leader, had been elected as the first prime minister. She approached Turner with a document. This is our new constitution. We've included protections for all citizens, equal rights, freedom of speech, everything we never had before. We want you to read it before we sign it officially. Turner read through the document carefully. It was good. Really good. This is excellent. Your people should be proud. Vera smiled. We learned from you. From Earth's history. You fought wars too. You made mistakes too. But you learned from them. You built something better. We want to do the same. Turner shook her hand. You'll make it. Just remember, democracy is hard work. It takes constant effort. But it's worth it. Back on Earth, changes were happening too. The Galactic Council had passed major reforms. There was now a rapid response force to prevent future genocides. 20 species had volunteered ships and personnel. Humanity led the training program, teaching other species the tactics they had developed. Admiral Shaw had been promoted to Supreme Commander of the Peacekeeping Force. He stood in a new command center on the Council station, looking at a display showing patrol routes across the galaxy. Captain Emma Watson, a brilliant tactical officer, served as his second in command. We have reports of pirate activity in Sector 7, Watson said. 3 merchant ships attacked in the past week. Shaw nodded. Send the 3rd Fleet. Tell them to capture the pirates alive if possible. We want to know who they're working for. Watson sent the orders. She looked at Shaw. Sir, do you ever think about retiring? You've been fighting for 2 years straight. Shaw smiled slightly. Maybe someday, but not yet. There's still work to do. The galaxy is safer than it was, but it's not safe enough. Not while there are still people who think they can hurt the innocent. Lieutenant Amy Foster entered the command center. She had been promoted to commander and now led diplomatic missions. Admiral, we just received a message from the Kalari Empire. They want to discuss a peace treaty. They specifically asked for human mediators. Shaw raised an eyebrow. The Kalari? They were one of the species planning to invade their neighbors before the war. What changed their mind? Foster smiled. They saw what happened to the Vakran. They decided talking was better than fighting. Send Morrison, Shaw said. He's good at diplomacy. Tell him to take his time. Get it right. Meanwhile, Colonel Nina Ross had retired from military service. She was back on Earth, living in a small house in the mountains. She spent her days hiking, reading, and trying to forget the things she had seen during the war. But she couldn't forget completely. The faces of the people she had killed haunted her dreams. One day she received a visitor. It was a young Vakran woman, maybe 20 years old. She stood at Ross's door nervously. Excuse me, are you Colonel Nina Ross? Ross tensed. Yes, who are you? My name is Kira. I'm a student from Vakra Prime. I'm studying on Earth now, learning about democracy and human rights. I wanted to meet you, Ross frowned. Why? Because you captured the Emperor. Because you helped free my people from a tyrant. I wanted to say thank you. Ross felt tears sting her eyes. She had expected anger, hatred maybe, not gratitude. I killed a lot of your people during the war. Kira nodded sadly. Yes, and many humans died too. War is terrible, but it was necessary. The Emperor would have killed millions more if you hadn't stopped him. So thank you. Ross invited her in for tea. They talked for hours. About the war, about the future, about hope. When Kira left, Ross felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. 5 years passed. The galaxy settled into a new normal. The Vakran were